Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, how's it going today?
Yeah, I'm doing really well, Bryce. How are you?
Good, thank you. I'm pretty excited about today's episode. I think
Yeah.
this is going to be a really good one. I find a lot of times when we do talk about music here on Overdue Finds, these tend to be like actually our one of our like some of our most popular episodes. And as we've discussed in the past, I don't want to include you in this, but I've admitted this before, I don't really have the greatest taste in music, I find.
I I think I have a great taste for me. It's just maybe not as diverse or modern or knowledgeable as it could be. So
Yes.
I'm quite happy with who I am and what I listen to, but I think there's always an opportunity to learn about great new artists and musicians and singers.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting because, over the last couple of weeks or so, I've been seeing all these ads. I've been seeing like interviews featuring Bruce Springsteen. And the big reason for that is he has this new album out, and it's called "Only the Strong Survive." And it's actually the whole album is just cover songs of these old kind of R&B and soul songs that they're not super mainstream, but he's decided to kind of cover all these songs in his latest album, and it kind of got us thinking, like, you know what? Let's share some of our own favorite cover songs on this episode of Overdue Finds. Because, like, Caroline, I'm sure you found this when we were doing some research for this one. There's a ton, and even a lot that I had no idea were actual cover songs.
Yeah, I had put on when I wrote the outline for this, I had the question of like what songs were you surprised to discover were a cover? And mine was like the one that I'll talk about. I only found out like last week. So, it's just a really interesting thing and I can't wait to talk about all the different ways this conversation might go once we get into talking about covers and genres and popularity and music and trends and things. So I think this will be a really fun conversation.
All right, so joining us today, we've got a couple of great guests. And this guest is actually joining us for the second time. They're a library assistant at your branch, Caroline,
Mm.
a Capilano, and they are making their second appearance on the show. They were last on our Best of Canadian Music episode. So welcome back to the show, Josh Carr. Josh, are you kind of our new kind of go-to person for these music episodes?
I guess I am. I listen to music all the time. I listen to it probably almost 8 hours a day. It takes up all of my time. I love finding new artists. I love listening to the same old stuff. I'm going to be very careful with the artists I mentioned on here because I could go into a tangent about a few. But yeah, no, I love talking about music, and I also love learning about new artists. Last time I collected so many artists. I listened to Patio Lantern so often after we discussed it. So I'm apparently now part of the problem. But yeah, no, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me.
And I have to say, Josh, on here on Overdue Finds, we are pro tangent. So
Oh, good.
yeah.
This is the wrong episode for me to have the particular tangent I want to have. I'm sure you're familiar, but I will go still on that tangent.
And I also want to welcome to the show first time guest. We love having first time guests. Actually, one of my colleagues from marketing, we don't really have a lot of marketing people on the show besides me. He is our web content administrator, Matt Schneider. Welcome to the show. How's it going today?
Hi, thanks so much. It's going wonderful. I'm really happy to be here and really excited to talk music. I'm a big music junkie myself, so I'm really excited to pick up some new recommendations that I might have overlooked. And yeah, I find these discussions are just always great for kind of tweaking curiosity in a way that you wouldn't kind of think to just a style of music that you'd never think to listen to before.
Nice. Yeah, it's yeah, I think this is going to be a really fun discussion today, and I know Matt, you're quite knowledgeable in music, so I have a feeling you're going to have some great picks for us here coming up on the show. But before we start talking all about our favorite cover songs, let's get into some of the stuff that we've been enjoying lately. Maybe it's music, maybe it's not. But let's chat about our recent Overdue Finds picks. Matt, it's your first time on the podcast, so we're going to start with you. What have you been enjoying lately?
Yes, lately I've been listening to the Mountain Goats' most recent album, Bleed Out, where the singer John Darnielle kind of got a little bit frustrated by the whole pandemic and figured that everybody needed a little bit of an injection of life and spirit in their lives, and decided to write a series of songs that are all based on various action movies. You have all sorts of tropes coming in. There's like the First Blood trope, and you have the fight sequence trope, or sorry, the training montage trope, and just really highly energetic music put to each of those different concepts. It's a really fun album, really great way to kind of inject a little bit more life into the year as it kind of gets a little bit cold and into winter and things start to slow down. It's kind of keeps me going through the day even when the sun starts setting around 4:35.
Nice. Is there a Hand in Your Badge song? Because that's also a big action
Oh,
movie trope too.
oh
A
man,
hand
you
in
know
your
what?
badge.
That's a great question. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I feel like it has to be mentioned, right? Like you can't have an action movie without somebody having a hand in their badge.
Like somebody's out of line. They have to be checked. So hand in your gun, hand in your badge. There's a song there, I think. All right, Josh, we're chatting music today, but do you also have a music pick?
I do have a music pick, but it's not really an overdue find. So I'm
Okay.
sad. I'm going to talk about this manga I've been reading. It's called Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. For me, I love manga that shows the creation of things. So we have manga like Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, which is all about creating shoujo manga. We had a discussion actually between colleagues about manga for younger audiences, and this was one of the ones that I like. I have a lot of manga discussion topics, but Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun is about this teenage boy creating this shoujo manga, and there's a girl who has a crush on him who does not know that he creates this manga, and it leads to so many fun hijinks between them. So she's trying to confess to him, and he thinks that she wants an autograph or that she wants to help him with his manga. It's just hilarious. There's so many great moments. Anybody who's seen or read the series knows about the dating sim episode. It's fantastic. And there's a lot of manga like this. There's recently been one called Blue Period that shows the creation of art and the struggle of art. And that's another one I highly recommend. Bakuman was about shonen manga, and it was done so fantastically. So if you're looking for something that shows the creation of art, those are the three I recommend. But right now, I'm really into Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. It's an anime too, which is fantastic for anybody who wants to watch something.
Well, I know for a fact it's not. I feel like I do. I There's so much I need to learn about manga, and Caroline, I think that's got to be probably a future episode of Overdue Finds, maybe.
We'll put it on the list for 2023.
Yeah, we will definitely be calling you Josh. Caroline, how about you? You actually have your own pick this week. I know the last couple of weeks we've been sharing some picks from our great stuff team, but touched base with you yesterday because I didn't want to overlap. But what are you recommending this week?
I am recommending a new book that we got in the library recently. It is Good Morning Sunshine, the Joey Moss story. And this is a picture book, a children's book written by Lorna Schultz Nicholson and illustrated by Alice Carter. And my one word summary of this book is delightful. If I could have another word, it would be lovely. And my third word would really be celebration, because it's a celebration of who Joey Moss was and what he brought to the city. I have to confess, as someone who came to Edmonton like as an adult, I wasn't really aware of who Joey Moss was and the role that he played, the impact he had on the city. And then you start seeing him. I think it was at football games first, like the tie with the football team, that I became aware of him, and then learned more about his history with the Oilers and the city, and the work he had done with the Winifred Stewart Society and other organizations to really promote the ways that people with Down syndrome can contribute and participate and be part of the city, society, Edmonton, all of it. And then he passed away in the last few years, and there's been a lot of tributes, including a new school being named after him here in the city. And so this book, it's a biography, tells the story of his whole life from when he was, a child performer on the tambourine to when he grew up and was working at the bottle depot, and then with the Oilers and the Elks, and just the impact that he had on so many people. It's, like I say, delightful as a children's book. It's full of sunshine, which, according to some of the people quoted in the book, is really one of the best ways to pay tribute to Joey himself. So if you are looking for a present maybe this holiday season, for a child or for someone from Edmonton, or you want to get them something that's really speaks to local interests like this, I highly, highly recommend Good Morning Sunshine by Lorna Schultz Nicholson.
Yeah, I saw that there was a children's book out, so that's great that you were able to read that. As a kid of the '80s, growing up in Alberta, I was so well aware of who Joey Moss was, and he was. I don't remember a time really in my life when maybe I didn't know who Joey Moss was. Shortly after Cheryl and I moved to Edmonton, I was working for the Edmonton Oilers for a little while. I did get to meet Joey on a few occasions, and it was like I was getting to meet like Wayne Gretzky. Basically, was this celebrity. So I was obviously really saddened to hear about his passing a couple of years ago, much like pretty much everybody else in the city was. But I remember as a teenager reading Wayne Gretzky's biography, and he goes into detail about getting to know Joey and help kind of bring him into the Oilers dressing room and kind of help with like the equipment and all that stuff. So as much reading as you can do on the life of Joey Moss, I definitely recommend it. It's it's such obviously there's a reason why everybody here in Edmonton and really in the hockey community loves him.
And I was excited to hear about the book, and then when I had a chance to read it, I was really, really impressed by the writing, the art. It's beautiful. The stylized version of 80s Wayne Gretzky that they feature in the pages when he comes into the story. It's just such an enjoyable book. The art is beautiful. It is it is a good book. It stands on its own. It's not just nice because it's about someone local or someone who you've heard of. It is a very, very solid picture book choice. We have copies now available at the library. Yeah, so Bryce, what have you been enjoying? Probably a lot of stuff, but you are going to share one of the great stuff picks this week.
Yeah, absolutely. I did have a pick ready, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to save. I will tease it for our next episode because it's more of a Christmas pick. So we'll save it for that next episode. But as I mentioned, Caroline, you've been kind of featuring some stuff from the Great Stuff team here at EPL, and today I'm going to share a pick from former guest and friend of the show, Katie Terzansky, who's the manager of our Strathcona branch, and her recommended read is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So this is the perfect read to stay in and devour on a cold night. This entire book takes place on an isolated and barely inhabited island off the Irish coast. A couple has converted the ruins on this island into a romantic wedding location, and their first wedding is between a celebrity couple, perfect for upping their profile as a venue. But the wedding night is ruined when someone discovers a dead body out in the storm, battering the island. The book's focus moves from character to character, one of whom you know has to be, of course, the murderer, because there are only so many people on the island. And the more you learn about each of the wedding guests, the more you start to see how the darker parts of their histories are connected. It's a really good book for people who like reading deep into character relationships, or people who like a locked room mystery in the style of Agatha Christie. So yeah, that one's called The Guest List by Lucy Foley, and yeah, you can put your name down for a hold here at EPL. So that's definitely like, sounds like perfect reading for this type of weather that we've been having lately.
Absolutely. That is one that I have also enjoyed and give my thumbs up for it as well. And when you start reading it, I found myself thinking, why aren't I invited to more remote island wedding getaways? Like I should really try to get in on this. And then you read a couple more chapters and you're like, oh no, 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 thank you. I'm quite okay.
Yeah, somebody eventually turns up dead all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that's a fair generalization. If you're having like a remote wedding like that, there will be questionable death at some point. So, all right. So let's get into today's topic. I'm so excited here. So yeah, best cover songs. There's so many different examples of them. And Matt, I'm going to start with you. For you, what do you think makes like something a good cover song?
Oh, I think cover songs, they're just fascinating objects because a really good cover song is just this really great fusion of the original song and then the artist who's performing it. And I think a great cover song should also kind of reveal something in the original song that you kind of didn't really notice there, kind of either a mood or like a playfulness, or really kind of highlight parts that maybe the original version didn't quite showcase in the same way. So I think in a lot of ways it can be really great to have a cover song that's, yeah, just kind of like that weird, like eerie deja vu feeling of familiar where you're like, I know this, but then you realize that you absolutely don't. I think that's what I look for the most in cover songs.
Josh, how about you?
For me, it so varies. I've listened to so many different covers. I think one of the big ones that we will probably discuss is Whitney Houston's Greatest Love of all, Dolly Parton's original song. And the difference is like how long she holds that note and how big that bombastic entrance into the chorus is. That makes a great cover, but then there's also settler covers. There's the piano covers. I don't think it's so easy to pinpoint what makes a good cover until you start listening to more and more covers and you're like, oh, I like this, or I like this. And even the same song with multiple covers, all those covers can sound good. For me, I just have to feel that the artist is doing something that's potentially just a little bit or a lot different than what the original artist did.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And it's reminding me of that, I can't I can't define it, but I know it when I see it, and I guess hear it in this case. There are some covers that tend to be more just a remake of the song, like a one-to-one paint by number type of thing, and those always remind me of the 90s film remake of Psycho, the Gus Van Sant version, where he did it like immaculately, like minute by minute, second by second,
Shot for
almost.
shot.
Yeah, shot for shot. Thank you. And like it was just a copy of the original, and it was not a success because it didn't, if you're going to watch a Psycho that has those shots, you watch the original. And if you want someone to bring someone new to it, that I think is what you're looking for in a cover. And it can be either through the changing the instrument or the tone or the message, or I have a fondness for covers that change if it was originally done by a man or had a male lead singer, and then the remake, if they're not changing the pronouns, or are they? And I think either way, there's like an interesting narrative that you create around the choices you make that come along with it. So yeah, I think what I want from covers is something that it that helps me to understand why they're doing it, and what they are bringing to the song.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of getting back to that whole analogy there. It's like you don't want it to be like this gimmick where like that was kind of like the gimmick and the hook of that movie was like, hey, this is a shot for shot remake. Whereas, yeah, I think with songs like you don't want somebody to come in and just try and sound like the original song. Otherwise, you're just gonna want to listen to that. So, yeah, I like to, when I hear a cover song myself, I want something like, obviously there's certain things you kind of listen for, but you want something a little bit different, like just some, like them to leave like a little bit of their own mark on on the song. And also too, like, as we will get into this a little bit later on here, but sometimes there is ways where you can improve on, like, the original isn't always the best. And is there something in the cover that maybe makes it sound a little bit better? So the other thing too, I just thought of, I remember Cheryl and I were in Amsterdam a couple years ago, and I remember we were kind of going through this outdoor market area, and they were playing like music, but the music was like, you could tell it was like current hits, but it was all done in, like, I don't know, like Dutch or something like that. But like you could tell it's like that's a Lady Gaga song that they're that they're singing. So I'm sure there's plenty of examples of that, just with different languages and in translation as well.
For sure. Okay, let's get in some of our hot takes. We should have a hot takes warning that we play now.
Yes,
But
like
are there
sound of
covers?
flames coming in.
Whoosh, yeah, that was the flames. Um,
Yeah.
uh, are there covers that are better than the original?
I'd say absolutely. I think if you kind of speaking of kind of songs where you don't realize that they are a cover and not the original, you look at something like Jimi Hendrix's "All Along the Watchtower." Like, can you imagine like that not being the version of the song?
Yeah, it's funny because I had seen that song listed in like a bunch of like, best cover song lists, and that was definitely one where I was like, okay, like I knew that was a Bob Dylan song, but then I actually listened to it and I was like, yeah, as somebody in the comments, and so I'm not taking credit for this, but it's kind of like the Bob Dylan version is to listen to like in the afternoon, but the Jimi Hendrix version is to listen to like in the evening. So, which I thought was like a perfect example of a perfect way to kind of explain the differences between those two songs.
For me, I've already mentioned it. It's the Greatest Love, Whitney Houston versus Dolly Parton. Whitney Houston, even Dolly Parton says Whitney Houston's version is better than hers.
I've gone on record here with saying "I Will Always Love You." The song from The Bodyguard is amazing. I love The Bodyguard. I'm pretty sure I've talked about my love of The Bodyguard in the past. Oh yeah, we did the soundtrack episode, so that must have been where I
Oh
get
yeah, I had a theory about that soundtrack that like pretty much like everybody had a copy of it in their household in like the year 1992.
Yeah, and the song "I Will Always Love You." I I wonder why it. I mean, Whitney Houston's voice is incredible, but so is Dolly Parton's. So
Hmm.
like? What is it about that Whitney version? Because it's on my list too. Like, I agree that it's definitely part of this conversation. What do you think it is about the Whitney version?
It's just her vocals. Her vocals are so majestic. I guess I'm mixing up Greatest Love and I Will Always Love You, I guess. But it's just how majestic she brings. Whitney Houston had a fantastic voice, and I don't think there'll be anybody like her to ever come again. Because that voice, whenever you hear it, you're just like, oh, it's Whitney. It's fantastic. In terms of songs that I was surprised to find out they were covers, You've Got the Love, I originally thought was a Florence and the Machine song. And then I found a song by the XX, which was You've Got the Love, but it's actually done by Candy Staton and the Source. And I'll say that I prefer the Florence and the Machine version. That is, again, just such a fantastic cover. It does so many great things.
Hmm. I think, yeah, when we look at songs where we're surprised to find out they were covers, that's because they've just become so associated with a different a different group, or whether that's through just mainstream success or longevity. I mean, if I say to you the song Respect, I don't think any of you, unless you're intentionally being contrarian, would say, "Oh, that's the best Otis Redding song."
Sorry, I was going to say, I think there's always something really magical when somebody just kind of inhabits a song so fully that it becomes like the definitive version like that. You know, they pick up on something that's happening in the song and they just again elevate it to such a level that it really redefines the whole song. You can listen to the original and be like, oh, I guess that's a good version. You know, like sometimes there can be really wonderful versions of both. I actually happen to think that the Whitney Houston and Dolly Parton just both wonderful songs and that they play off each other in really interesting ways. Dolly Parton is kind of almost like a quiet confession to like an intimate lover, like in a small space, whereas the Whitney Houston version is just like this giant bombastic declaration of love in public that just like overwhelms you with emotion and kind of like knocks you backwards. And it's fascinating to have those two kind of existing in the same space. But yeah, there's definitely kind of some of those songs where somebody just inhabits it so fully that you can't hear the original kind of as anything other than like a weird pale version of it, which is so strange to think.
Yeah, I was just gonna quickly comment on the Dolly Parton version of "I'll Always Love You." It definitely, you described it perfectly, Matt. Because yeah, I kind of had written in my notes here that like her version, like Dolly Parton's version, just seems way more personal, and like obviously she wrote it, and apparently it was written about Burt Reynolds, but it's yeah,
Wait, what?
it just that's what I had
Hang,
heard,
hang on.
that it was written of.
I thought it was written about Porter Wagoner, her writing partner, when they split up.
I'm gonna have to go
Wow, we are
to
gonna have to
the
do.
Overdue Finds Facts team here, and we'll get this cleared up.
Honestly, I'm really not. I'm not challenging you. My mind is just blown by how I could not have known that it was about Burt Reynolds. I feel like if that is true, why are we not talking about this every single day?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just right now. Here we go. You are correct, by the way. I don't know where I heard that Burt Reynolds thing, but I think that's a more entertaining story for sure. But quick fact checking here. "I Will Always Love You," written and originally recorded in 1973 by Dolly Parton, written as a farewell to her business partner and mentor, Porter Wagoner, expressing Parton's decision to pursue a solo career. The single was released in 1974.
But then released again in 1982 with a re-recording for the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas soundtrack, which I believe was a movie she starred in with Burt Reynolds.
Burt
So
Reynolds.
we got
Yes.
there. Okay, we got there.
Got
Whew.
my crappy facts was need to do a better job of fact checking that before we record. So
I mean, I've been calling it greatest love of all this entire podcast, so I think we're okay for the facts. We got there.
It's all good.
It's all
Yeah,
good.
we will get there.
We will get there. Another cover. Everybody actually knows this, except for me until recently. "Torn" by Natalie Imbruglia is a cover, but it's not originally an English song. It was originally written for a Swedish artist called Liz Sorensen. I cannot pronounce the name of the song because it's in Swedish, but originally it was that, and then it was redone in English by Edna Swap, and then it was Natalie Imbruglia's, as we know, basic one-hit wonder, but she had other hits in other countries. But that's mostly what we know Natalie for is Tort, and it's a cover.
Definitely, as someone who like lived through the peak Natalie Imbruglia popularity, it was not, I don't remember it being well known that that was a cover. It was just so closely associated with her, and it was only within the last couple of years where that kind of came out. And I don't know, there is definitely something interesting about like the music industry and whose song is it anyway. And maybe not with this because it's clearer, I mean it was in a totally different language, but this idea of like is a song, does a song belong to the writer, to the performer, to someone who arranges it differently. I don't know, the music industry is just has a lot of different layers to it.
I think you're really right to point to the music industry as like kind of this fascinating nexus of where all these different parts come together, because really like the concept of a cover album, or sorry, cover song, is almost it's almost manufactured by the industry. Because if we kind of look back historically, there's folk music where people just play each other's songs, and like the concept of ownership didn't really exist in the same way. So this idea of it being like your song is much more recent. And even if you kind of think back kind of to not that long ago, kind of like our parents' generation, if you look at bands like the Beatles and stuff like that, they did songs that were covers, but they weren't treated as covers at the time. It was more that you just had like someone who was writing songs as a professional songwriter, and then that song would kind of get passed around to different musicians, and eventually kind of someone would kind of claim it. So it's really fascinating, yeah, the role that the industry plays in all of this. The kind of the concept of a cover entirely is just springs out of the industry and the way that different artists relate to one another in it.
I was just going to say, and then you get into also the kind of the whole gray area of like sampling as well. And while, they're not necessarily remakes of songs, you can kind of like, the Dido song that's sampled in the Eminem song. I think, that Eminem song was absolutely huge, but so was Dido's song. But I think, a lot of people can kind of get the two mixed up anyway. But sampling kind of adds a whole other wrinkle into it.
Also, there's the song Edge of Midnight by Miley Cyrus, which uses lyrics from Edge of 16 by Stevie Nicks. And again, it's a discussion of sampling another artist joining you to kind of remake the song. It is basically a full remake of Edge of 16. But it's also done, I think, fantastically well. It's really beautiful. Miley Cyrus has really kind of come into her own in more recent years, I feel, and that whole album she did was just fantastic.
Miley Cyrus, Dolly Parton's goddaughter.
That's right. Miley Cyrus also did a pretty great job covering Jolene, by the way. You can check that one out online.
It's a great cover. I did want to mention the one that I had no idea it was not by the most popular artist who sang it. Girls Just Want to Have Fun is not a Cyndi Lauper original. It was originally recorded in 1979 by Robert Hazard, and completely changes how I think about that song. Not in the sense of like it like delegitimizes it, but just this message of girls just want to have fun coming differently as an empowerment anthem through Cyndi Lauper, I would say.
Yeah, actually, I found that out for the first time myself yesterday. I did some reading on it. Apparently, that version was actually never released as a single.
Really?
Apparently, it was just as a demo. And it sounded like there was really no intention of him releasing that song as a single on an album, but he was looking for kind of like the perfect artist to kind of release it and sing that song. And obviously, I'm not sure how him and Cyndi Lauper came to be, but hey, the rest is history. And Cyndi Lauper totally owns that song, and it's like essentially like an 80s anthem if you think about it.
That's basically the plot line of the movie Coyote Ugly, except instead of Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Cyndi Lauper, it was Can't Fight the Moonlight and Leanne Rimes.
It's interesting that you mentioned Cyndi Lauper because, of course, that's not her only famous cover. There's also like True Colors, where like people, I don't think often think of Phil Collins when they think of that song because she just did it so well.
And speaking of Cyndi Lauper again, I Drove All Night was actually originally done by Roy Orbison, done in 1987, the year before his death, but was not released until after the Cyndi Lauper version released. And then, as we know, Celine Dion covered that song too. Celine Dion, queen of Canadian covers, did that song as well. And they're completely different songs. Cyndi Lauper is a little bit more toned down. Celine Dion is, again, a really bombastic version of that song.
I feel like I'm gonna have to do a Cyndi Lauper deep dive now.
Yeah, we're gonna have to release a bonus episode here of just Overdue Finds presents the life and times of Cyndi Lauper, I think. Just a couple songs I just want to quickly mention here that I think are better songs than the original. So one is It's My Life by No Doubt, which was originally a new wave song by the group Talk Talk. So when you listen to them, they are pretty similar, but I find like the Talk Talk original version, I find with new wave sometimes like the singer sounds kind of like whiny a little bit. I just think Gwen Stefani nails it with the No Doubt version myself. And this is going to be probably the hottest take on the show, unless Caroline, you've got one to top this. But the song Magical Mystery Tour by Cheap Trick, of course, originally done by the Beatles. The Cheap Trick version is better than the Beatles version. Boom. Let that settle in for a little bit. Here's why I think it's a better version than the Beatles one. The Beatles one, of course, very much like, it's very 60s. And that's, it's very fun and going on this magical mystery tour. What I like about the Cheap Trick version, though, is it's, you think about it. You're going on a magical mystery tour. And Cheap Trick basically is their version makes it sound like it's more mysterious and darker. Like this isn't going to be, some kind of this nice tour. They just go a little bit darker with it. And once again, the Beatles version is perfectly fine, but I like the Cheap Trick version just a little bit better, a little darker. You don't know what you're going to be getting into on their version of Magical Mystery Tour.
All right. I can't wait till we hear from listeners who either agree or
Send
disagree.
your hate mail. Yeah. Caroline, what cover song do you think is better than the original?
I mean, I'm there with Whitney, although, see, the problem is I often will go back and forth. And I'll be like, yes, absolutely, it's so much better. And then I'll be in a different mood or something and then come back to it. So aside from ones that just kind of like eclipsed it, like Respect or Girls Just Want to Have Fun, I also have a fondness for Tainted Love, the soft cell version, which arguably is the most famous version. But was originally done by Gloria Jones in the 60s, and it's more of like a upbeat, downbeat girl group number, like 60s sound. But I mean, you can't beat those 80s synths on soft cell. So I just also really like the song.
No, it's a good one. All right, so I guess we talked to hear about what some of the covers that we think are actually better than the originals, but like, what are some of the weirdest covers you've heard, but maybe they totally work, or maybe they don't? But Matt, were there any covers that really stood out to you in this category?
Yeah, I think probably one of the more famous of weird covers has to be Jonathan Colton's cover of Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back, that just really works. Works so well that allegedly it was stolen by Glee. I guess I probably can't say that since they never settled it in court. But if you look at the lyrics, you may find a certain change that indicates who was stealing from whom. But yeah, that's probably one of the versions, one of the cover versions I can think of that's kind of the weirdest version that just really works. Like, who knew that Sir Mix-a-Lot was writing for banjo?
Josh, how about you?
Oh, I have a list. So first things first, I do have to bring up the Rockabye Baby Collection, which does lullaby versions of rock songs. My favorite is the Fleetwood Mac album. I really love the chain that they do. It's fantastic. I'm about to make a whole section of people cry when I bring up the Florence Machine cover of Stand By Me that was done for Final Fantasy 15. If anybody in the audience has played that game to the end, I am sorry for bringing up traumatic memories. Please understand it's so hauntingly good. Like, this was one that I could have used for the previous question. I think it is better than the original by a mile because she has these high, long notes, and it's done with such a haunting melody. It's fantastic. And next one is Say Lulu Staying Alive, done by the Bee Gees, I'm pretty sure. Yes, thank you. And that is another haunting one. It's more low down, toned down, but it's also extremely haunting. Very, very, a little scary actually. It could be done for a horror movie. My other one is Moo. It's the artist M with the O/O. That's how you say it, Moo. And did a cover with the Spice Girls, Say You'll Be There, but it's, again, more toned down. Not as haunting, but more toned down. And the last one, because I have to bring up a drag queen for Caroline, Trixie Mattel covered Video Games by Lana Del Rey, and it's more of a little more upbeat, a little more country, rather than Lana Del Rey's, again, haunting song. So that's the non-haunting song that I like, apparently.
So, Josh, you're a total sucker for the haunting versions of covers.
I guess I am, even though there's another one. Again, the haunting cover was the one I didn't like. The Saturdays, a UK artist, girl group, not anymore, covered Just Can't Get Enough by Depeche Mode. And that version just delights me. But yeah, no, I love haunting melodies. It just brings me into the right state of mind for when I need to deal with the current conditions.
Yeah. Well, there is something like we talked about already. There is something really neat about just, having an artist take something and they just do something different with it. Like, they kind of make it their own. And, yeah, like a lot of those picks. Now it's funny recording this because after we're done recording here, I'm going to be hitting YouTube or the library, obviously, and trying to find a lot of these songs. Caroline, how about you?
I am going to take you back to the early 2000s. YouTube is not a thing yet. Facebook is not a thing yet. MP3s do exist, but they're still kind of emerging. A little artist named William Shatner comes out with a cover of Common People by Pulp, and the internet goes wild for it.
I cover whips though.
So this was off of William Shatner's album Has Been, which he worked on with actual music producers, and the Common People cover also features Joe Jackson in it. It's spoken word, it's singing, it's the moment, it is everything. And I went back and listened to it because I was thinking, okay, Caroline, was this just you were new, like on the internet, and like you hadn't seen as much as you've seen today, and were you just like going wild for it because it would? No, it holds up. It is so good. I highly recommend going and listening to um William Shatner doing Common People, and I double checked just in case that is available through Hoopla, so you can stream it right now. Pause the podcast, go listen to Common People, come back, you'll be a different person.
You won't regret it. You won't regret
No.
it.
Yeah. Did you hear this, Saw? Like, do you remember this when it came out?
No, I don't remember when that came out at all. Like, I remember seeing clips of like, because it definitely wasn't the early 2000s, but like he's on like an award show and he's doing his like spoken word kind of talking song. But yeah, it was way earlier than the 2000s.
He had an album in the 60s, and I think that's where Rocket Man came from. But
Yes.
and then I think it was 2004 when Has Been came out. And it was kind of this like, oh, this isn't just a joke or a joke at all. It kind of is. It still is. But he's in on it and does better with it than you expect. So, yeah. Bryce, what about you?
Yeah, there's a few actually. So, a couple actually that I recommended. I think it was maybe during our Best of the Year episode last year. But the Foo Fighters last year, they covered the Bee Gees, and when the Foo Fighters covered them, the name of their group for that album is called the DGs, and their versions of Night Fever and Shadow Dancing in particular, they're amazing covers of the Bee Gees. And yeah, if you haven't heard it, please go and check those out. But yeah, they sound a little bit like the Bee Gees, but there's like obviously, you can tell it's the Foo Fighters doing it a little bit harder and of kind of rock versions of those songs. But yeah, I'm definitely not going to say that their version of Shadow Dancing is better than the actual Bee Gees, but it's up there, and it definitely complements it for sure. Another one is so the Rolling Stones, kind of one of their big original hit songs was Under My Thumb. There's a Canadian band by the name of Streetheart who redid Under My Thumb in the early 80s, and this is actually a really good cover, and it's something that you might not think would work because it's obviously one rock band covering another, and the Stones to me are like the greatest rock band of all time, and that includes the Beatles. I swear that I'm not hating on the Beatles on this episode at all, but yeah, their version of Under My Thumb, I think it rocks. It's way less poppy than the Stones version. It definitely kind of has more of that 60s pop feel to it. But the Streetheart version, there's some funk to it. It's really good. And probably the weirdest cover I heard kind of doing my research for this episode, and I'm not sure if anybody else here had a chance to listen to it. It is My Way. Not the Frank Sinatra version, that's the original, but the version sung by Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols. If you can get through the first 2 minutes of that song, just stay with it. It sounds terrible at the very beginning, but once he really gets into the lyrics and everything, kind of the chorus of the song, and it actually for some reason kind of works a little bit. It's definitely a different version, but the lyrics with kind of Sid Vicious's voice, it kind of works a little bit. But it's definitely the weirdest cover I've ever heard for sure.
Nice. Well, we've covered, a lot of songs today. But before we move on to our roundtable questions, are there any covers that haven't come up so far that you'd like to talk about? Maybe they didn't fit into one of the categories, but you just want to talk about them and think people should check them out. Josh, I'll start with you.
All right. So again, I have another little list. This one, it's a Canadian artist that I did not mention in the Canadian music episode, so I need to mention it now. Fifi Dobson, or Little Rock Princess, had an album that did not originally come out called Sunday Love. Due to record label issues, we couldn't discuss that for an entire episode, but we won't. But two of those songs from there got covered in two different ways. So Selena Gomez and the Scene covered As a Blonde and kept it very true to original. And then Jordan Sparks covered Don't Let It Go to Your Head, and it's a lot more toned down. I prefer the originals for both there, so I don't like the more haunting version of Don't Let It Go to Your Head. Another thing I had to bring up was Jewel was on The Masked Singer as the Heart and released an entire cover album of every single song she did. And she has an Via La Rose on there, which is her cover is so beautiful. I don't. Edith Piaf did that original one,
Piaf, yeah.
and yeah, and they're both very good. I love Jewel's tones of voice, and I do have to bring up one more. Lily Allen did a cover of "Somewhere Only We Know" by Keane, originally done
Oh, that
for
one's so
a.
good.
It's so good. It's a lot more, Christmassy, wintry, and it's just so beautiful. So yeah, out of all of those, I'd recommend if you have not checked out the Lily Allen cover of "Somewhere Only We Know," I recommend it. And the video is very beautiful.
Matt, did you have any picks we might have missed?
One that I kind of wanted to mention, it doesn't really fit into any of these categories because it's just a really good cover, even though it's not kind of like definitive. It doesn't do anything like radically different with it. But John Cale has a great cover of All My Friends by the LCD Sound System that just has like this, yeah, really wonderful droning violin part. It's a really fantastic rendition of the song.
Yeah. Bryce, anything left on your list?
Yeah, so this kind of falls into, I guess, maybe our first categories of I had no idea that this was a remake, but the song Blinded by the Light by Manfred Mann's Earth Machine. It was a big hit in the 70s, and it was kind of one of those songs that a lot of people they always get like the lyric in it, they don't really know exactly what they say, but they actually say revved up like a deuce. And I had no idea that Bruce Springsteen in the E Street Band originally, that was like their song. And I had a chance to listen to kind of both of them yesterday, and both songs work. I can definitely understand why the Manfred Mann's version was a bigger hit, but it's definitely sounds a lot more polished than the Bruce Springsteen one does. And another one too is I just want to give a shout out to thinking back to my love of Quentin Tarantino soundtracks or soundtracks to Quentin Tarantino movies. "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon," which on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack was performed by the band Urge Overkill. We haven't really heard from them since that song, but it's originally a Neil Diamond song. So those are a couple of my favorite covers. Caroline, did we miss anything for you?
Just that I think that maybe in the future, the way that we talk about, personality types or how we work together, I think we will be adding what is your favorite version of Hallelujah? Originally Leonard Cohen. I kind of became aware of it during the Jeff Buckley, Rufus Wainwright era. The Katie Lang version has a lot of love. So I think that there's going to be, you know, some mass identification uh, of personality wise related to Hallelujah in the future.
I agree, but mine is the parody version Waluigi that I've seen on Twitter. So my personality type is bizarre. And before we continue on, I do have to mention If You Could Read My Mind, originally by Gordon Lightfoot, but a lot of people know the Stars on 54 version.
Yes. Stars on 54 and how different it makes that song. That is a very good example of changing a song. My other note, got to get in my Canadian content here. I love the Bare Naked Ladies "Lovers in a Dangerous Time"
Ooh,
cover.
yeah.
Theirs was for a Bruce Cockburn tribute album and came out in 1991. It was one of their earliest hits, and Stephen Page has talked about his trademark kind of warbling on that I still love after all these years. So, yeah, that's getting my Canadian content in on those last few covers.
If I could quickly get some Canadian content in and kind of throw out something that I mentioned briefly before but didn't really talk about, a really great cover album, which is kind of a concept that we haven't really talked about but is really interesting, is Tegan and Sarah had a cover album of The Con come out, which is just fantastic. It has a whole bunch of different artists kind of lending their vision to the songs, and it's always interesting to hear a cover album because you get kind of the one artist that is being covered as the kind of the through thread, and then you get to hear a whole bunch of different voices kind of just do different takes and kind of see how they all play off each other. It's a really fun experience.
Yeah, that Bruce Springsteen one that I mentioned, the new one that came out called Only the Strong Survive. I know that one's not by, like, his covers aren't from like just one artist, they are like from a wide variety, but yeah, that whole idea of a cover album is definitely interesting.
Before we get to our roundtable questions, Bryce, can you let everyone know what we'll be chatting about on our next episode coming out on Friday, December 16th?
Yes, 30 years ago on December 11th, 1992, we were treated to the release of one of the most popular Christmas movies of all time, The Muppet Christmas Carol. So join us on the next episode as we reminisce about this beloved version of the Charles Dickens classic and why this version, starring Michael Caine and the Muppets, resonates with so many people today, 30 years later. Caroline Land. Caroline, actually, I heard, hopefully maybe we'll get a chance to watch this before we record it, but apparently there's going to be like an extended cut version released on Disney Plus featuring like cut song or something.
Yeah, it's there was a song cut from the original release of it that the fans have been clamoring for these decades, and now they are listening and giving them what they want, and yeah, we'll definitely be talking about that. I want to say that, and this will likely come up again in the episode, but back a few months ago, we put our fall slate of episodes on StaffWeb, our internal communications, and asked if there were staff at EPL who wanted to come on and talk about different things. We had more volunteers for the Muppet Christmas Carol episode than any other podcast in Overdue Finds history.
Yeah, it was definitely I think it was into the double digits. Yes. Of people who were coming out saying like, I love this movie. This is like my favorite Christmas movie. My family watches it every year. It was like probably
movie.
Yeah. It was like the toughest move, having to figure out who we were going to have come on the show with us. So it's going to be a good episode.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, round table question time. Josh, I'm going to start with you on this one. If you could pitch a cover to any artist, what song and what artist would you choose?
Oh, this is where the tangent happens. I told you. So Taylor Swift's Midnights basically just came out. It's all I've been listening to. Also, Carly Rae Jepsen's The Loneliest Time both just came out. So again, another Canadian content mention.
The same night, wasn't it? The same day?
It was the same night. And then there were
those two albums and Tegan and Sarah's new one dropped all on the same night.
Oh my gosh, so many albums dropped that night. It's crazy. Anyways, I want to see Carly Rae Jepsen cover Midnights, and I want to see Taylor Swift cover The Loneliest Time. I realize it's not a single song, it's an entire album, but Carly Rae Jepsen covering Bejeweled, Taylor Swift covering Talking to Yourself, that would just be magical. So yeah, I'm breaking all the rules. I have to do them both. The Midnights, it's going to destroy my year-end listening ranking.
It would break the internet for you if that happened.
Oh, I think it already has.
All right, Matt, how about you?
Okay, so much like Josh, I've been listening to a lot of Midnights lately. So Taylor Swift was in my head, and I was listening to her song Antihero and was just really taken in by a lot of the internal rhymes that she plays within it. And it had me thinking of another song that I really love with a lot of fun internal rhymes going on, and that's Andrew Bird's song Imitosis. And I actually think that she would really nail a cover of it. It would be just fascinating because it's when Andrew Bird does it, it's kind of this really laid back, kind of jazzy song, kind of much in his regular style that still has some really good pop elements to it, has a really driving beat, and yeah, that great internal rhyme where it's just this really kind of meandering, drawling, playing with the words. And it just struck me as something that I think Taylor Swift would really nail. It's really, really seems like some of the same things she was doing on Midnights.
Nice. Caroline, does your pick involve Taylor Swift?
Almost, almost. And I'll explain that when I get to the end. But
Okay.
I also broke the rules on this because I have the song, but I don't have the person. The song is, I think, whichever kind of artist has a popular, like, has a breakup that's like driven by like gossip and innuendo. They need to come out with like a really hard cover of These Boots Are Made for Walking,
Ooh,
and
I
just
like
like
it.
celebrate that moment and put their ex on blast. So I don't know who. I was googling recent celebrity breakups, and didn't find a musician. I mean, there's lots. There were lots where I was like, "Oh, you should do this," but they're not singers. And then, so I whoever it is, I think you should take that moment, make it yours, use These Boots Are Made for Walking. And then I laugh about the Taylor Swift because as I was writing this down in my notes, I was so tempted to do These Boots Are Made for Walking, Taylor's version, afterward. So, if she wants to, I would happily listen to that cover, but I really think it should be someone going full scorched earth on their ex.
Maybe whoever Pete Davidson, like whatever singer he dates
Yes.
next, that could
Yes.
be the next song. And
Yes,
just,
he needs to date another singer, and then that can be the song. Yes, I like
yeah,
this.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bryce, we again have so many great ideas on Overdue Finds that we are just giving away for free. Who do you want to pitch to?
Every week, the entertainment industry, they tune into Overdue Finds
They
to get
should.
our ideas and picks. I'm still waiting for a phone call from a lot of producers and everything. So here's mine. I've talked about on the show. I love the band Kiss, like from the 70s. Love that classic rock sound. One of my favorite songs by Kiss is Strutter. So I was kind of thinking, who could really do a good job of covering Strutter? And then I thought of last year, Weezer's album came out called Van Weezer, and it was inspired by classic rock. And I'd love to hear Weezer cover the song Strutter. They would do something a little different with it, but I think they would still make it rock. So that would be mine. Rivers Cuomo, if you're listening, Strutter, do it. I'm sure you're listening.
Yeah.
All right, second question. Last question. Matt, the Christmas season is coming up quickly. If you were a famous singer musician, which Christmas song would you most want to cover?
So anybody who kind of knows me is going to just be laughing right now because I worked in retail for a lot of years, and in my life, most people know that I absolutely can't stand Christmas music consequently because you listen to it for like 3.5 months and it's always like the same few albums. I started to come around a lot, especially since I had a kid and started seeing how magical he thought it was. So it really kind of turned that around. But the one song that's really stuck with me the entire time that I've never been able to kind of it's always broken through my cynical shell of my black heart is "Oh Holy Night." It's just a stunning song. The music is beautiful, especially the "Fall on Your Knees" part. Just anytime an artist absolutely nails that, it just sends shivers down my spine. And lyrically, it's kind of a blast too because it's just this really powerful song that involves a lot of love of humanity and liberation and freeing of enslaved peoples. And it's one of those songs that you can just yeah, really kind of go all in on. And I absolutely love anytime an artist really nails it. Speaking of Andrew Bird, he does a beautiful version of it, but actually all whistling. He's very famous for his ability to whistle. So he plays the music and then whistles instead of singing the lyrics. And speaking a little bit of Muppets, fun fact, if you watch the recent Muppets movie directed by Jason Segel and starring him and Amy Adams, he's actually the one who's doing the whistling for Walter the Muppet at the end. That's Andrew Bird. But yeah, just a wonderful song. I think if there were any that I do, it would definitely be that.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely a Oh Holy Night. It's a very powerful song, and yeah, done properly, it's quite good. All right, Josh, how about you?
Okay, so I'm the exact opposite because I've been listening to Christmas music since June. So this has been the hardest choice. I was tempted to say the entire Family Christmas album by Sharon Lois and Bram, another Canadian content creator, but I'm actually going to say "You're the Star on My Christmas Tree" by RuPaul. I love that song. It's just so beautiful. I would love to cover it. I think it's just magical. It's something I think about on Christmas. It's really romantic. It's really soft. It's also really just happy. And I think that's what Christmas is. It's just really happy.
Nice. I agree. Caroline, how about you? What song? Warner Brothers has come to you, and they're like, Caroline, we hear you every week on Overdue Fines. This has to happen. What? You get to make your own Christmas album. What song? What's going to be the big release?
I was toying with Wonderful Christmas Time, but I think Paul McCartney's probably had enough, shots fired at him this episode. So I'm gonna go with another favorite of mine that, again, taking new wave and maybe doing something different with it. Christmas Wrapping by the Waitresses is a song that I just have a deep fondness for.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite Christmas songs. Like, honestly, you could have that song come on in June or July, just like Josh has been listening to his Christmas music since June, and that's a
Yeah.
banger song. It's so good.
So, I mean, I'm not saying I would compete with the Spice Girls. Maybe I could do something with them. I could be the new Posh if Victoria Beckham is like, serious about not doing anything with them anymore. So Spice Girls, call me. Bryce, what is your holiday centerpiece song?
All right. So mine is, I'm doing a little bit of a twist on it. I am doing the 12 Days of Christmas, but I'm doing the Bob and Doug McKenzie version of the 12 Days of Christmas. That will be my cover. So I'll keep everything the same. I know I won't do as good of a job as, Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas, but I will do my best to cover them. And yeah, as a good Canadian, I think I'd be up for the task anyway. So and I mean, who doesn't want 4 pounds of back bacon and beer for Christmas? Come on.
Oh, thank you both so much for joining us today. This has been delightful talking about all these songs. I'm going to have so many to listen to. Before we go, is there anything that you would like to let our listeners know about? Josh?
Yeah, so we just had our book club at Capilano Library. We did Crazy Rich Asians, the book and the movie. Almost every branch at EPL has at least one book club going on a month. If you'd like to see what books are coming up, register for one of the book clubs. Check out epl.ca/book clubs, and we look forward to seeing you. Hopefully, I'll see you maybe in January for our book club.
Nice. And Matt, is there anything you'd like to mention?
Yeah, so this is kind of just based on a personal experience, but the other week I took my kid to the Shelley Milner Library, and I know Edmonton's a really big city, so not everybody can get to it easily. But if you do get the chance, just bring your kids down to the Shelley Milner Library. It's absolutely wonderful. The staff there are great, and your kid will have an absolute blast. There's just fun for all ages there, right? Yeah, just take the time, swing by, enjoy the library.
Yeah, it is a pretty because I don't work at the Milner Library, am not always I don't always have the opportunity to see what's going on, but I happened to be there last week and just walking around and seeing all the great stuff and peeking in at the children's library and seeing what was happening on the digital wall. Just a really great atmosphere at the library. Definitely a great destination for families here in Edmonton. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't done so, we encourage you to subscribe so that you get all of our new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, and most importantly, tell a friend about the show.
Yeah, don't forget that we'll have a link to everything that we talked about in today's show notes. And if you want to share your favorite cover songs with us, or maybe disagree with me on my pick of Cheap Trick's version of Magical Mystery Tour being better than the Beatles version, email us at podcast@epl.ca or hit us up on Twitter by using the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.